Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for May's staff chat. My name is Priscilla Andrews. I'm the clinical manager with the Cancer Wellness Center. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. The staff chat series was created with the intention of giving our Cancer Wellness Center community some insight into conversations between the clinicians at the center about topics of importance and of interest to those impacted by cancer diagnosis. And I am very pleased today to be welcoming back for the second time. This is part 2, Donna.
I'm very excited to be back.
To be welcoming Donna Oldenburg, who is the center's bereavement coordinator, one of the therapists with us. And today, I think when we met the last time, we kind of just talked about like grief in general, and especially kind of the early part of grief. And I know both of us talked about, there's this whole other additional topic associated with that, which is the year and beyond, right? What that idea of crossing that threshold, especially, and I think we'll focus today mostly on people who've lost a spouse or a partner, but kind of that year post loss. Kind of this idea, and you can sort of speak to this of, when the year anniversary comes, there's sort of being this idea like you're somehow going through some like magical like grief car wash as you pass through that anniversary. And on the other side, it's a brand new car. It's like everything's fresh and shiny and I'm all done with all of that, right? But that's not quite how it goes, right?
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think it starts even a little bit before that year anniversary. We usually start to feel a little bit better, 6 months and a little past, people start to say, hey, I'm not crying as often, I'm making some progress. And then probably about 8 weeks before that first anniversary, they get hit, boom. Feels like they've hit a wall. They feel stuck. They feel like they're regressing. And then they start to have all these thoughts. I'm coming up on the year. What's next for me? Where am I going? I don't know what my life is going to look like. And a lot of terror sets in. They start to look at that bigger picture.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that, actually, because I just recently attended a training session that talked about the missing stage of grief, which is anxiety. Sort of the theory that they were talking about. And I think going alongside of that, I think something that I hear a lot, and I'm curious what your experience is like people coming in and saying, like, I thought I was making so much progress, like, what's wrong with me? Or like everybody else seems to be moving on and I feel stuck. That I think people kind of come in with this sense of like, I'm failing somehow. Right. I'm not doing this right.
Right. I think this is really something that stems from a lot of societal pressures. You talked about the car wash analogy, and I really like that because we live in a society that leads people to believe that you're allowed to grieve pretty much for about a year, and then you have to be all better. You have to move on. Those words, move on, right? And we know that's not really what happens at all in grief. So I think that we have to look at grief as this longer term situation. And during this longer term situation, we have stops and starts. We have progress, we have feeling stuck. We have progress, we have regression, it's all mixed together. So we try to assure people when they're going through this that it's perfectly normal to feel stuck sometimes. And we look at why they feel stuck, what's happening, right? And that's where we can really help people to say, what can we do to start moving forward again? Where are you getting stuck? Sometimes they're stuck because there's all that stuff left that they haven't cleaned out the closet and they haven't whatever. Sometimes they're stuck because what looms ahead feels really scary. And they think they have to make a gigantic leap. They think they have to have it all figured out. And we sort of help them to take those baby steps. And that's what really gets them unstuck.
And I think what you just said made me think of something too, which is, I think there's also the piece of some people kind of feeling impatient with themselves, right? Like they don't know what's next and they want to know what's next, but they've just gotten done with like basically this year of trauma where they're like every day is relative to the year before when their partner was there. I mean, I'm curious if you can speak to like, you know, your experience with working with people who, again, that sort of sense of impatience, like I want to know what's going to happen next. I want to know what my life is going to look like. And I just don't.
Yes, this just came up in our young widow and widowers group just this week. People are planners by nature. A lot of people are planners by nature, and they're used to being in control of their life. This is where I want to be. I plan it out. But now their whole world has been upended. They have no idea where they're going to go without their spouse or whoever it is that they lost. And so they're trying to figure out, how do I plan for this? How do I plan? Where am I going to be? What am I going to be doing? What does my life look like? Do I move? All these questions. And we try to say, this is where we have to be sort of kind to ourselves. You don't have to have it all figured out. This is kind of a period of experimentation. If people step back and look at it that way, let's not worry about planning everything and making solid decisions. Let's think about, where do we want to try stuff on for size? See if it fits. If it doesn't, we toss it aside. If it does,
Yeah.
we pick up some new things and keep moving forward with that.
Yeah. But kind of being open to experimentation.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think the other thing that calls to mind is just the perspective of in many partnerships, and maybe this is making a blanket statement because not every relationship is the same, but normally you're kind of making decisions together, or maybe your partner kind of has their thumb on the scale of how you make decisions. So like just the process of getting in touch with, on my own, what is it that I like, when depending on the relationship, that may not have, there might not have been a lot of space to just, and that might have worked, like not as a dysfunctional thing, but like you might not have spent that much time thinking about like, what do I on my own like to do? What do I on my own want to do? Because it's just always been relative to your partner.
Absolutely. And we all know when we're in a relationship, there are compromises, right? Sometimes there are things we want to do, but we can't because it's part of the compromise of a relationship. So we like to look at saying to people, let's take a step back, way back, right? What did you think you wanted to be after college? What are some of the things that you wanted to do, try, explore, that, you know, we had to put on hold because you got married, there was family, there were kids, there were other responsibilities. So that can be really helpful to people to start this exploration period.
Yeah.
And tell them, you don't have to compromise anymore, right? These decisions are yours to make, and it's okay to make them. There's a lot of guilt involved in making those decisions too. They feel that when they choose things that perhaps their partner would not have liked,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even approved of in some way,
Mm-hmm.
they feel like they're being disloyal, and there's a lot of
By
guilt with
betraying
that.
them.
Yes, betraying them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, and I think you know, I think that also raises like another aspect of how that hope, like right after the kind of leading up to the year anniversary and after, can be so provocative because people have different experiences of what their life was like before they were partnered, or how they feel about the compromises that they made in those choices. So, you know, to go back and be thinking about that time, which I think naturally happens, whether we suggest it or not. I think a lot of times people are like, the last time I was alone, I was 23 or 24. Um, that can stir the pot of a lot of like choices that were made, sort of choices that weren't made, but sort of happened anyway. So a lot, I think that there can be a lot of personal exploration and kind of resolution that comes looking back at your lifetime in that way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's in some ways, I mean, this might be, you know, overstating it, but it's like starting with a blank slate in many ways, but there's still some of those hopes and dreams from before, positive things, disappointments, all of that are going to factor into where you go leading on, right?
Yeah.
But one of the exercises we like to do with people when they feel really stuck and they say, I don't have any idea, is kind of this free writing exercise. Take a piece of paper and sit down and think about free writing anything you dream of that you might like, that you might want to do, that brings you joy, whatever it may be. Things from way back when that you love, things from the present, and let's see what starts to crop up. I had a conversation with one of my private practice clients today about this very topic. And she said, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. And then all of a sudden she said, I think I want to go to Paris for a couple months and just stay there. And it was wonderful because she became so excited about this idea of this adventure.
Yeah.
Which was certainly not something she would have done before while she was married, but now it was an opportunity for her.
Well, and I'm curious what your experience is, because I can recall many times, especially in groups, like people kind of being overwhelmed with the number of choices, like the freedom itself sort of feeling oppressive at first. I mean, is that something that you've seen as well, where like there is a process of sort of leaning into the like, I get to make these decisions. If I want to go to Paris for 2 months, that's up to me to decide if I do that or if I don't do that. But I think that can be very, and maybe this is earlier on in grief, but that level of choice can feel very foreign and overwhelming for some people.
Sure, absolutely. Because boundaries can help everyone, right? To kind of say, okay, my choices are more limited, right? But right now, for a lot of people, it feels like there's so many choices and so many decisions that it's overwhelming. They're flooded. They're just flooded with all of the options and they don't know where to start. So that's why we try to do some of those exercises I talked about to kind of, let's hone in on some things that are popping up for you. Let's see where there's some themes. Wow, everything you put on your list has to do with you really exploring your artistic side. Okay, what are some things we can do that explores that? Or maybe it has to do with helping others. What are some volunteer opportunities that might interest you? What are some ways that you can work with others to share those gifts? And then we start to tie all these loose yarns together for them.
Yeah, because it can feel like such a like, it's just swirling around. Like it's sort of, I think of it like it's a ball of yarn that's kind of just all knotted up. And so that exercise sort of, and even just exercising the muscle of like letting yourself daydream.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, depending on your partner, depending on your relationship, that may or may not have been a big part of the relationship before your spouse died. Yeah.
Sure.
I want to come back to something that you said, because it's certainly something that I've encountered, which is this feeling of betrayal or feeling like I'm being disloyal, whether it be because I'm moving forward, because I'm making choices that were different than the ones my partner would make, because I'm actually happy. Um, you know, when somebody presents with that kind of constellation, what's your general approach?
Mhm. Yeah, we hear the word guilt so many times in bereavement. I feel really guilty because I had a good day, because I laughed today, because I joined this club, because it was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. And the word guilt gets thrown around. So what we like to do is say, let's talk about guilt. What is guilt? Guilt is an emotion we're supposed to feel when we've done something wrong. What have you done wrong? Your spouse is not here. You're not betraying your spouse. You're not leaving your spouse to go off and do something that they're asking you not to do in some way, shape, or form, right? So we sort of start with that. Let's drop that word, because there's really no place for that word guilt when we're talking about grief. And then we say, why do you really worry about this? And usually it's because there's this idea that if I experience happiness, if I move forward, I'm going to forget my loved one. I'm going to leave them behind. They didn't exist. There's something in everyone about that comes up. right? So we
Yeah.
talk about, okay, how can you move forward and still bring a piece of them with you? This is one of the things we talked about when we did the presentation on finding meaning in grief. How do we give meaning to their life, but still allow you to move forward? There's
Mhm.
lots of creative ways to do that.
Mhm. Well, and it's interesting to hear you talk about that, that the idea that in some ways, even as uncomfortable as the guilt is, that's in some ways easier to express than that sort of underlying emotion of I feel guilty, because under that is this fear. And the fear is I'm going to forget them,
Yes,
right?
I'm
They're
going to
not
move
going to
on.
be, I'm going to, and I'm going to lose. I mean, I think there's the fear of I'm going to forget them, and the fear of like, I'm going to lose that connection. You know, like I've certainly had people come in and say, I can't remember their voice,
Yes.
right? I think there's a pain. It's an extra layer of loss of when we start to maybe lose some of the clarity of that mental image of that person that's been so important to us.
Yes.
Um, I just heard somebody just ask us a question along these lines of, they said, can you talk a little bit more about guilt of moving on if there are children in the house or others that have not moved on? And I will say, how do you feel about the term moved on?
It's a terrible term.
Because what do you say instead of moved on? I think we say that a lot, and then kind of I often help try to reframe that. Because what phrase do you like
Well,
to use?
we usually like to say move forward because you're moving forward. That's not moving on. Moving on certainly implies that you're somehow leaving that person behind, right? That terminology makes you think that, oh yeah, they're back here and I'm here. Moving forward just means that you're taking steps towards something that is yours, is your new life to create. So probably move forward.
Yeah,
Definitely move on.
yeah. Well,
Move
and it
through, also move through. Move
yeah.
through is probably better actually than move forward in a lot of ways, but
Move through
either
the
one of
grief.
those.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's interesting to even hear the question of like, if I'm moving on, but other people are not, it sort of implies like that those people may feel like you've forgotten that person, which is not the case, even if new things are coming into your life.
Right.
And I know you mentioned earlier you run the Young Widows and Widowers group. So, I mean, I think that's maybe with children in the home, but you could even have adult children. Like when people do come in and say, like, I feel like I'm moving forward, I'm moving through it. Maybe I've been in therapy, I'm in a group, but my son isn't, my small child isn't, um, my spouse's siblings are in a different place than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the important lesson is that everybody grieves at their own pace and you can't drag people along with you to where you are. Nor would it be right for you to pull people back if you're behind others who are moving forward, right? So you have to kind of approach it with that mentality. We're all at a different pace, and I need to meet them where they are, right? If my child is still struggling with the loss of dad, but I'm starting to feel stronger every day, I'm going to help them. I'm going to perhaps get them professional support at the Cancer Wellness Center. I'm going to, be supportive of them, be available to speak to them, and it's okay that I'm in a different place.
Mhm.
In some ways, being in a different place, if you're ahead of someone else in your family, is a wonderful thing for them to feel hopeful that they can get there, right? Um, this is why it's kind of nice in bereavement groups too to see some people who are a little further along. It's very encouraging to those who are more newly bereaved to see, wow, there are some good days coming, right? There is some
Yeah.
hope.
And I think the thing that popped into my mind too is, the question I would ask is, what about, like, tell me more about how that's provocative, right? Is it provocative because you're worried about them? Is it provocative because you feel judged by them? Is it provocative because you get triggered? They're upset and I don't want to go there anymore and I need a break from it. And seeing them reminds me that I still have a little bit of kind of unfinished I've not moved through it. I've put it in a little box over here and I don't want to look at it for a while, right? Like I
Yes.
think there's so many different experiences relative to like kind of seeing other people's experience with grief and putting your situation relative to theirs.
Yes, and all of the above, every one of the things that you laid out. It's different for everybody, but it's all of the above. Yeah. So we try very hard to get people not to compare their grief to someone else's. I think that's the most important message in all of this.
Yeah. There's no playbook that says you're supposed to be at a certain place.
Right.
Actually, when I was in that training program, it was for professionals, and somebody wrote a question and said, I read a book that said after 6 months, grief should be resolved. Is that accurate? It's just like, no, it's not accurate.
The
So,
answer is no. Yeah.
and I think, I will say, just as a little plug for the center and for people like yourself who specialize in grief, like grief is a specialty and not all therapists have that lens. And it doesn't mean that people who work with other issues and concerns cannot be informed from like a bereavement and grief model, but it also doesn't mean that every therapist is going to be sensitive to kind of what is the range of normalcy for grief.
That's absolutely true. And it's the same thing with cancer, right? Lots of people already have their own therapist, but then they get a cancer diagnosis and they come to us at the cancer center because it's different. We have a different understanding of what they're experiencing. So
Yeah,
for sure, I highly recommend, of course, the center first. But then if some time passes and you need to find someone outside the center, absolutely look for someone who specializes in grief and loss. It's a very unique focus.
yeah. So I want to back up a bit, if that's okay, because I want to marry the I feel like I'm betraying my spouse, and I feel like I'm moving forward and other people are not, or other people think I'm moving forward and I'm not. And I want to encapsulate it in the D word, which is dating.
Oh, the D word.
Um, I think, well, I'm curious what your experience is as the year approaches, or when you're working with people who are past a year of loss, how that topic gets raised and kind of what the range of experience is with that.
Such a wide range. I
Yeah.
have had people begin dating at 2 months post loss. I have had people who are in our long-term group who are 5 years out and have not even thought about dating, right? So it's such an individual thing. But around this year mark, when we start to see people thinking, what do I want for my future, right? A lot of what is expressed is, I feel really lonely. And I don't think I want to feel so lonely forever. I don't think I want to be alone forever. And this is when people start to think about this. I'm not saying they're acting on it necessarily at the year mark, but they're starting to think about it. So it's a very scary word for people.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating. I had one group that went for 2 years, which is unusual, but it was a 2-year group. And it was fascinating to see the people who said, at 1 year, oh my gosh, I don't know how some of you are dating. I could never do that. And by the end of the 2-year mark, suddenly, well, I think I might consider this. Maybe we can talk more about it, right?
Yeah.
So know that it is something to think about. But it is one of those things that we say, you really have to be ready for it. It's not just to fill a gap of emptiness. It's any relationship requires you to be focused and really be present in that relationship. So something to think about.
And I certainly think there are people who dating is a bit of problem solving, especially early on. Like, I'm lonely, I want companionship, I want a sexual partner, and dating sort of meets those needs. I think, and I'm curious what you've noticed of like the people who are dating versus the people who are seeking a relationship.
Yes.
I mean, do you notice there's a difference in attitude or presentation there?
Yes, I think again, like you said, seeking a relationship. I don't know if you meant that in terms of trying to fill a gap, trying to be that replacement.
Mm,
I think what we find a lot of is sometimes people go in with that mindset, but then they realize that this person can't replace their loved one. They
yeah,
may be a wonderful person. They may be kind and loving and gentle and caring, and they appreciate their company, but they're not filling that gap. So if you're looking for someone to fill the gap, and you think dating's going to do that, that's a place where you're going to be very disappointed. If instead you're sort of taking your mindset to, I'm lonely, I'd like some companionship. I'd like someone to go to the theater with, someone to have dinner with. We'll see where it goes, but that's what I'm looking for. Usually those are more successful approaches to dating. It may wind up growing into something more, but it's not really ever intended from the beginning to be something to substitute.
yeah. It's funny because as you're talking about, I guess funny is not the right word, but I'm reminded of somebody that I worked with before who started dating and came in very upset the first time that the person that they dated behaved and reacted in a way different than their partner.
Yeah.
Right? It kind of burst this bubble for them of like for them that was this moment of realization of like, oh, like that's what I was trying to do. I thought like I'll just put this person here and they meet the qualifications and they were going to be as my in this case as my wife was, and then just realizing like, oh, like this is a person with thoughts and feelings and I have to get to know them and see if this is going to work and are we compatible. But that was like a real like aha moment for them.
Yes, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
going to be different. It's going to be different. It's like starting from scratch, right? And again, anybody going in with this idea of, I want another spouse that's just like my spouse, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And the reality is, we do find that a lot of times people find a next partner at some point in time who's very different from their spouse, especially when you're talking about someone who has lost a spouse after a long-term marriage, right? They may have come together when they were in their early 20s, and over their many years together, they've evolved and grown. Their interests have changed. And now sometimes they want to look for somebody who has interests that are more in line with some of their own personal interests that were different from their spouses. Maybe
Yeah.
their spouse didn't like to travel. They love to travel. So they might find
Yeah.
somebody who loves to travel.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not always, even though people go in with that idea, I want someone just like my wonderful spouse. Sometimes it works out better when it's someone a little different from your spouse.
Yeah. Because we don't, I mean, I think that's such an interesting to think about, like on so many levels of like, there may have been a deep emotional connection there that made the marriage meaningful and maybe having a family together, or the relationship, I should say. And then, but maybe as you got older, you were not activity partners, you had different interests, or maybe you weren't sexually compatible.
Right.
That sometimes dating offers the opportunity to sort of like explore
Yeah.
that different part of yourself that just it wasn't a part of the relationship, not good or bad, it just wasn't a part of the relationship maybe.
Right.
Yeah. And I think along with the dating, I think that is often the time where I end up, the person I'm talking to brings up their kids, and especially actually not just kids in the home, but adult kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adult kids often are way more difficult than younger kids when it comes to dating and a
I shouldn't
potential
laugh,
partnership.
but
Yes, it's very true. Very true. They have very set ideas
yeah,
about what should be happening with their, surviving parent, right? And it doesn't often include dating and partnership and
yeah,
imagining someone other than mom or dad with their
yeah,
parent, right?
yeah,
So yes, so that can certainly be problematic. But here's the thing: this is your new life, right? You need to look at this life as the life that you're going to create. That's going to bring you happiness. That is going to bring you that, whatever that is, if you're dating in particular, the companionship, whatever you need. Because most of the time, particularly with adult children, they're not going to be there with you, right? Maybe they have their own spouses, they're living their own life. And so I'm not saying don't take into consideration their thoughts and have discussions with them, but you have to make choices now for yourself.
Mhm.
And they may not always be in alignment with what your adult children believe.
There may be more, yeah, I think that is an interesting area where the being a single parent versus being a co-parent, right? Like if you're used to being a co-parent and your kids push up against you, and you and your spouse or your partner turn to your kids and together say, that's not going to happen, right? Whereas an adult, with your spouse is gone, like having to be a parent by yourself and just like, not in a maybe an uncaring way, but in a firm way, say this is something that's going to be a part of my life. Like I'm going to be dating. Like this is a woman that or a man I'm interested in. I hope you'll give them a chance. You might not have had to do that
Yes.
until the dating came
Yes.
up on the radar.
This is an important issue with dating and just in general. I work with a widow who said the other day with she had all adult children. And she said, if my husband were here, this would not be happening, because he would say, this is not working out like this. We're just not doing this. And she
Yeah.
said, I can't say that. That was his role to kind of be the bad cop, right?
Yeah.
I was always the good cop. So she said, I'm not really having trouble laying down the law with him and saying this is unacceptable. So yeah, you're right. It's really hard sometimes when you are that, particularly when you were the good cop parent, right? It's really hard for you to advocate for yourself and stand firm on some things that are important to you.
Yeah. I think along with dating, and I know we talked about this before, I think the post year, I'm sort of summarizing this. There's sort of the three big things that I think often come up, which is stuff,
Yeah.
events, right? Like going to weddings, what am I going to do about the holidays now? And the house. If somebody owns a house, do I stay in the house? Do I keep the house? Do I sell the house?
Yes.
Could you just speak a little bit about sort of what you've encountered and what guidance you may provide?
Okay, a couple different things. Well, let's start at the beginning, the stuff. So, by a year, a lot of times, not everybody, but a lot of people have cleaned out the closet somewhat, right? The clothes and things like that. And again, not everybody. Sometimes people take longer. But then there's this other stuff, right? The whatever your loved one may have collected, the baseball cards or the collectible frogs that are up on the shelf. And there's that feeling that I don't really want this stuff, but I don't know what to do with this stuff. And it was so important to them. How can I throw it out, or how can I give it away? Right.
Yeah.
So again, we kind of go back to this original core message of you are recreating your own life. We used the analogy today with one of my clients and said, okay, imagine when you're grieving, it's kind of like you're in a lifeboat, right? By yourself. And you've got all that stuff in the lifeboat with you, but that lifeboat is going to sink if you don't jettison some of that stuff that's holding you back from that lifeboat moving forward. So we need to figure out, how do we jettison some of that stuff? Will we feel better if we donate it? Will we feel better if we give it to another collector who really appreciates it, right? We look for ways to find meaning in getting rid of the stuff, not just tossing it in the garbage, and that can be really helpful. You talked about I forgot the second thing that
That's
you
okay. Like events, like so
events,
thinking about like the wedding,
yes, the events. So events, I feel a little bit like events. It's sort of like ripping off the Band-Aid. Most people find that once they get through that first time, it becomes easier to go to events alone. So sometimes it's helpful to say, can I bring my daughter or my son along with me to this wedding? Can I, to kind of get acclimated to not being there with the spouse. But other times it is a little bit of that ripping the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
And then the house is a really big question. You have people who will immediately make a change, even though we know all the books say you should probably wait a year to make these big decisions. A lot depends on what you might have been talking to your spouse about before that. Sometimes the spouse passes away and the couple had already been talking about selling the house or downsizing or moving. And then it might be very right for you to get rid of the house, not have to deal with it, and move. But if you haven't been speaking about that and you're unsure, the answer is you will know. You will know. If it doesn't feel right to sell the house now, don't sell the house now. Sit and wait. See how your life is evolving, right? Don't make any major moves. What if you decide as you're going through this grief, wow, I think I want to go back to work. And the job is, in Chicago, but you had been thinking about moving to North Carolina. Well, don't make any sudden moves or changes right at the beginning.
Yeah. And
Evolve.
I feel like that's one area where I find people get a lot of outside input
Yes.
or like a lot of questions. I think that dating and pets, like get yourself a dog.
Yeah,
How long are you going to stay in this big house? Wait, you're dating already? Or well, when are you going to start dating? Like there's a lot of, it makes me realize like you can be on the receiving end of a lot of implicit or explicit judgment and advice giving in a way that you may not have experienced until you lost your spouse.
Yes. It's amazing how everyone has an opinion on your life when you've had a loss. They all have it figured out for you, what's going to work best for you. And this comes again from this societal pressure we have that we've got to get people over their grief and moving on, right? Here, we're going to fix it for you. We're going to make it all better. A dog's going to do it, right? And they all throw out their own personal feelings. Maybe they love dogs. So get a dog. Maybe they think, moving would be great for them. Move somewhere warm and sunny. That's going to solve all your problems, right? But you have to step back from that and say, I really need to make a decision that's right for me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank them very much for their input, and know that it's coming really from a place of caring for you too. They want you to feel better and they want to fix it, but only you can fix it. Only you can make those right choices. Yeah. So you need to thank them for their well wishes and listen to your gut, right? If it does not feel like the right time to move, don't move.
I will put a plug in here for grief counseling just for a moment, because I think that for some people, it can be very challenging to get in touch with what they want. I think especially if they've been in a long-term marriage, if they've had children, if they're kind of used to putting other people first, and I think that's where grief counseling can be really helpful, is to just have that support as you're kind of trying to get in touch with yourself again, or get in touch with yourself in a different way than maybe you were before.
100%. Yeah, that was going to be the next thing I said. I said, listen to your gut, but your gut doesn't always send a clear message, right? So that is where it is really important that you find yourself a good counselor, a cancer wellness center, and you spend time saying, I feel stuck, I feel lost, I feel confused, it's too overwhelming. And then the counselor will help you, right? They'll help you to sort through it, right? That's what our job is to help spin all those loose pieces of yarn into a nice rolled up ball to bring it together. So I think that that's really a great starting point. And know that there's no pressure. There's no time pressure here to figure it all out.
Yeah. So I see we're running down on time, and I do want to make sure, just to close with kind of checking in. I don't want to ignore the fact that we are in the midst of COVID. We're kind of hopefully coming to see the other side. However, I think that brings with it challenges for people who've lost somebody, especially early on in COVID, when there weren't services, when you weren't running into people in the grocery store, you weren't socializing with people. And, that experience of, do I have some sort of in-person memorial service now? Do I, how do I handle it when I run into that person I haven't seen in a year and they want to talk about the loss, and I'm kind of like, I don't want to have that conversation anymore. I'm curious what you've encountered, especially as we're kind of opening up
Sure.
a little bit more.
This has been the most unique year for grief, of course, and seeing things that we've never had the chance to see before. And you've mentioned all of them, but just to kind of delve into each piece, the first piece being ritualizing, memorializing somebody after a loss is really important to the healing process. People who had a loss right before COVID or just as COVID was hitting or during COVID didn't have that opportunity. So the grief gets kind of complicated, right? There's not the same levels of healing that happen there. I absolutely encourage people not to say, oh, it's been so long now, I don't know if it's worth doing a memorial, right? That could be a really important part of their healing. So they need to kind of revisit that idea. A lot of families are in the same boat, right? Dealing with that.
Yeah.
So remember that that's important. And if it feels important, or that you feel that your loved one got the short end of the stick by not being memorialized in some way, by all means, have your ceremony. Yes, you're right. Meeting in the grocery store. You haven't seen people in a year. They've never had that chance to really say to you, I'm so sorry for your loss. And so they see you, and that's immediately what they want to do. But you're starting to feel like it's been a year for me. I'm healing a little bit. I'm having some good days. And they keep dragging you down, right? Know that this is going to happen, and it's okay for you to say, thank you. I'm feeling good today. And, I don't really want to go into it too much because today's a good day, right? Set your boundaries, firm boundaries. They're yours to set.
Yeah.
People will follow your lead with that.
Yeah. We are right here in our last minute. I can't believe it. I'm always so proud of myself when I'm punctual because I like to go over all the time.
Well, the time went really quickly. So thank you for all your great questions.
Yeah, Donna, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate kind of the bereavement part too, because I think hopefully this highlights for people that it's not like our last presentation was to imply, or our last chat was to imply, that grief only happens in the immediacy of a loss, but that it's kind of something that you wrestle with well beyond those first days, weeks, and months as well.
Yes, absolutely. And to, wrap up, remember that the center offers support, not just immediately or even for that first year, but with our Journeys group, we have people up to 5 years bereaved, because we know that grief continues on for some time and different topics and things come up for you. So take advantage of those things for support.
Thanks, Donna. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank everybody who has joined us here on Facebook or Zoom, or maybe tuning in on our YouTube channel. I will be back here again on June, I gotta look at my paper, June 16th. I'm very excited. I'm going to be joined by some staff members for Journey Care, and we will be talking about palliative care and hospice care and what the differences are about what's provided in those services. So thanks for being here, and we'll hope that we'll get to see you again. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.